Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast. My name is Chris Balas. With me, Doug Skene, Michigan's former All-Big Ten offensive lineman, looking nice and trimmed up. Skene, and speaking of trimmed, attention listeners across the galaxy, all the way from Australia to Houston. Do we have a pube problem? Insert space music here. So if you've got 2010 A Space Odyssey music, put it in here. If so, our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with their 4th generation and brand new lawnmower 4.0. Kick your pubes to the next planet with the Performance Package 4.0. The orbits in your pants will feel like you're in zero gravity when you use the best tools for the job from the leaders in male grooming. Join the 2 million men, I'm one of them, worldwide, who trust Manscaped and get your rocket ready for takeoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code 20GoBlue. That is 20% off plus free shipping with the code 20GoBlue. I will say this, it's hard to get through a read like that, Skene, without laughing. It is a great product. This is about the 6th or 7th take. Whoever wrote this, God bless you, because you gave us a little bit of amusement today. This is really a great product, though, and the kits are fantastic. We've sold a ton of them through our website. Haven't had any complaints. And in fact, everybody seems to really like it. So anyway, that's 20% off plus free shipping with the code 20GoBlue at manscaped.com. Pubes, orbits, everything else. So Skene, thanks for joining us and keeping a straight face this time. So let's talk a little football now. So it's
Please.
interesting. It's interesting. It is interesting. Reading through the Michigan football preview, and I was going through it and all of our predictions for the season. I think I was at 7-5, and I believe you got yours in a little bit late. Actually, it wasn't even you; it was Doug Karsh. But I'm looking at Doug Karsh's pick at 5-7. I'm like, oh my God, Doug Karsh. And the sideline reporter picks him at 5-7. Guess what? We mixed up the Dougs, and it was Doug Skene who had him at 5-7, and you aren't budging from that number. And so here's Karsh getting all the crap from everybody else for going 5-7, and your opinion, and it was you, yeah, Mister.
It was me. It was me all along because
it was you all along.
I think this is what, year 4 or 5 of just. I think I've gotten over the hump, Alice. I am Kool-Aid free of the navy blue Kool-Aid. I just don't drink it anymore. I've seen enough to know that it doesn't taste all that well. So I'm just not drinking it. So and this preseason prediction is a reflection of that.
You think? So yeah, there's no question about it. It all starts up front. I got to tell you a story. First of all, I went up north. Got a buddy up in Traverse City, Dean Rose, who a great friend, and stay with them from time to time. We're going through the peninsula. He said, "Hey, guess who I ran into?" He said, "I ran into Mike Hayes, Ryan Hayes' dad, and they were talking about Michigan football. Ryan Hayes being the left tackle, and my buddy Dean goes, yeah, my buddy Chris Balas." He goes, Mike Hayes, Brian's dad goes, "You know Chris Balas?" He goes, "That bleepity bleep compared my kid to Chris Zeman." and and that, I mean, every word in the book, and I think he was half joking. What I want to say to Mike is that Chris Zeman was a hell of a ball player.
He I was going to say he was all Big Ten.
He wasn't all that big. He played on a national championship team, and he played in the NFL for a little while. And the comparisons there, not saying that his kid is not a good ball player, because he's a good ball player. Obviously, you wouldn't be starting it if he weren't. But my whole point about the Zeman thing was, and the Zeman comparison was, if you want to be an elite player, you're going to have to be a little bit bigger. And this is a converted tight end who has great feet. Played an outstanding first game at Michigan, was actually the offensive MVP. So you don't have to be huge, but you do have to be able to put on a little more weight, was my point. Am I wrong on that, Skene? And are you going to give Mike a little more fuel?
No, I would say to Mr. Hayes there that the comparison to Chris Zeman is not a negative. That means Chris was a good football player, all Big Ten, and like you just said, played on championship teams. But we're not quite ready to compare young Mr. Hayes to Jake Long. Not quite yet. We think the tools can be there. We think that the skeleton is there, the physical size of this young kid. He's got all those things. He's just got to develop those pieces physically, and then obviously go out and execute. And he can be a really, really good left tackle, and we're all hoping to see it.
Right. And he is inked in the starting lineup. There are 3 of them, as a matter of fact. And it is Hayes, it is Zach Zinter, it is Andrew Stuber, and it's kind of where they're going to be playing him now. And I've always advocated for putting Zinter at center because I think this guy has that nasty streak. I remember when they moved David Boss over, and I think it was 2004. And I thought, okay, who was it? Mark Beal or something, but he just wasn't ready for the job. And that's kind of the way I still feel about Andrew Vistardis after watching some film. And we'll break down some film before the season starts of some of these guys so that we can look at the negatives and the positives of these guys going into the year. And of course, guys can improve over a year as well. But to me, that is where the best line begins, is with one of your best players at center. And speaking to somebody close to the team yesterday, they said that Zach Zinter is the best lineman on this team by far. There's no close second, which makes me feel good and makes me feel a little bit concerned because you want more guys at that level, clearly. And you're talking about a guy that's played maybe 4 games in a Michigan uniform. But your thoughts on Vistardis at center, if that seems to be the way they're headed, which it really does?
Well, we've seen Vistardis play, in just a little bit of that shortened season last year. And I'll say the same thing based on what I saw from him last year. Effort is not the issue. Desire is not the issue. I think that Vistardis is just athletically not as gifted as some of those other guys up there, and because of that, he's a little bit limited in what he can do at that position. And that's fine. He's not the first guy that's played out there. I'm one of them that is athletically, was athletically limited in what I can do. The question then becomes, what is this offense going to ask Vistardis to do? Do I think that he can be as effective as other players that have played that spot in pulling and getting around the corner like we used to see out of Glasgow? No, I don't think that's one of his strengths. So hopefully this offensive coaching staff doesn't ask him to do those kinds of things. So if you keep it within his realm of strengths, then he can be an effective center in there.
Let's talk a little bit about the guards. Trevor Keegan, we only saw a little of him last year. Zinter, obviously, I think Zinter's got the potential to be the next Michigan great. And everybody's been saying it, obviously. Jim Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, the offensive line coach. But with Stuber, first let's talk about Keegan a little bit. You're having a not really a first-year guy. He's played a little bit in there. But to me, you can't really expect a line to come out of the gate and dominate if they haven't played together for a long time. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. It's absolutely fair because especially nowadays, the pace of practice and the fact that they stay off the ground, the whistles are quick, and they're told to not put players on the ground and stay off each other's legs. That is not what Saturdays are all about. So until you get several hundred reps together, in the case of and that might be an entire football season, but just getting reps at live football speed is critical to the fine tuning of an offensive line. And unless something has changed and they're doing these things in practice, it's not quite the same. It'd be the equivalent of going 80% in practice on a regular basis. And that 20% doesn't seem like much, but it's a lot. And so, until those bullets are flying for real and the pace is for real, then that finishing off and that getting to know somebody and understanding where you need to be in pass protection and where a help offensive lineman needs to be in a combo block and learning to use your hands and feet with your line mates, you can't quite get there until you get into as much live football as possible. And unfortunately, with the limitations that Michigan and all of football has nowadays, they just can't do it. So I would anticipate it's going to be a game or two until these guys can really have some expectations on them. So when we open up against Western and we're watching that stuff, Balas, we're probably going to see some clunkiness, and that is to be expected.
Yeah, and that's barring injury too. There's always a guy or two that's going to be banged up, and we're hearing some things. Can't go into detail at this point, but you never know, and that's why it's so important. They talk about their depth. Harbaugh said 10 deep when we talked to him. However, Doug Skene, our negative Nancy here, said he watched 5 clips before we got on here, and he said based on those 5 clips, I'm not very encouraged by what I saw. Now that's 5 clips, so it's not really fair to say, okay, this line's going to suck.
It's not fair at all. It's right. Not. No, it's not. It's not fair at all. And I've virtually seen nothing. But I can go back to what, again, the most important thing that I know going into this season is what I saw a year ago and what this offense, the offense itself, and I'm not talking about footwork. I'm not talking about individual technique. I'm talking about the offense itself. Put that offensive line into tough spots. And the offense itself was asking guys to make blocks that I thought last year were damn near impossible, even for the best of players that have ever played there. And you and I have talked about that in previous film breakdowns and podcast, Balas. Those kinds of things, you can help your players have success if you ask them to do things and give them tools on the field to have success. And what I mean by that is give them the freedom to make some calls. If they have a tough angle up there at that offensive line, you come up there and you have an assignment, and that assignment requires a darn near impossible thing to accomplish. You make an at the line call with your line mate to change angles, maybe exchange responsibilities, change protection. You can do those things. I know it's possible because it was done 25 years ago when we played. The question is now is why aren't we doing the same things now? And that's where this coaching staff's got to help these guys out the most.
Yeah. Is Andrew Stuber a Doug Skene type player? This is a guy he's a bigger guy, not the best athlete out there, no disrespect meant, but playing tackle. And I've always thought Stuber would be better at guard than at tackle, but they seem to like him out there. So your thoughts on that?
No, I like him at tackle. I remember
Okay.
2 years ago when he was playing tackle in the Florida bowl game. I thought there was some things he did really well out there, and I think athletically, I think we forget how tall and long he is. I think he's best suited at the tackle position. When you get into the middle and you're playing against some interior guys, it's harder for dudes to get down lower. You got to bend your knees and hips a little bit more. And so I'm fine with him playing tackle. And when you mentioned earlier that Zinter was head and shoulders the best offensive lineman on the team, he's the first name I thought of. I thought, how is it possible that Stuber's so far behind if that's true? I have a hard time
Right.
believing that head and shoulders because Stuber's played a lot of football at Michigan. He should
Yep.
have a good year coming up this fall.
Yeah, and there are athletic guys on that line. There really are, and guys that were highly recruited, guys that Ed Warner, who's no longer here, and people don't like to speak very fondly of him, even though he got a lot out of that line, in my opinion, and those lines that he coached. He said that this is a nice crop, and he said these guys in 2 or 3 years are going to be fantastic. So, and I trust his judgment when it comes to that. He knows linemen. He's seen linemen. I coached a great line at Ohio State where he took them basically from a crap line and made them a very good line. Did the same thing at Michigan, frankly, if we're being honest. So, so I believe there's talent there. It's up to Sharon Moore to get the best out of them. We'll see what happens. The biggest concern from everything we've heard, we listed our 5 best positions that we've heard about in the spring so far. Neither line was on there, and the defensive line sounds like it still has the most work to do. How big of a concern is that?
That's maybe the most concerning to
Yeah.
hear of all the scenarios because if your defensive line can't be stout in first and second down and can't get to the quarterback, it's going to be a long season, Ballas, if that's true. Of course, we'll see when the truth comes out on Saturdays. But in today's college football, you had better be able to score 35 points, and the offense, Michigan's offense, can help the Michigan defensive line by staying on the field, possessing the football, and getting down there and scoring often. But at the same time, if you can't disrupt opposing quarterbacks with regularity, you're in trouble because that means the opposing offense is probably going to score 35 or more points. And so a lot of college football today, I think, is a shootout kind of game. But there's a couple of elements you have to have in college football to have high success. One of them is a great quarterback, and the other one is a defensive line that can get after the opposing quarterback. So it better come along, or I'm afraid my prediction of 5 and 7 is going to happen.
Yeah, he's Doug Skene, Michigan's former All Big Ten offensive lineman. Skene, a couple more things here about Manscaped. Remember, 20% off plus free shipping with the code 20GoBlue. Inside this package, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your whole solar system. So it's really good stuff. We're going to get you a kit, Skene. I don't think we've gotten you one yet, but then you can give us a review or have Tracy give us a review. So let's talk a little bit now about something that the offensive guys we're talking about, and I think it was Josh Gaddis who said, look, when we're talking about the running game, he said people were saying, hey, are you still speed in space? And they were asking him, and I know you don't like that term. I don't like any term for any offense, whether it's run and shoot or speed in space. Just line up and play football, right? But when he said, yeah, we're going to commit to more to running the ball. And I thought, okay, Skene's going to like that. Are they serious about it? And because he said, I thought we went away from it a little bit too much last year. And if you look at Hassan Haskins, averaged 6.1 yards per carry, and there were games where he only had a couple of carries. I like him as a back, and I like what he shows. It sounds to me like, from everything we've heard, again, he and Blake Corum are 1-2. Blake Corum is really seeing the field and seeing the holes a little bit better, too. But is that something that encourages you, or is it just coach speak to you?
Well, I think at this time of year, it's all coach speak because none of it
Right?
matters till we see results on Saturdays. But even modern offenses, like I say, everybody's scoring 35 or more points. They're still finding a way to run the football. It just may not be the traditional way that you and I can remember and the way I remember playing. So college offenses now do a lot of read zone, right? Against multiple reads. It's not just the defensive end. Could be the interior defensive lineman, could be the inside linebacker, who knows? And so whether it's the quarterback carrying the ball on a keep or when you've got a duo of backs that can get it done, good offenses in college football today still are rattling off 100, 125, 150 yards of rushing, all the while dropping an effective passing game to go along with it. It's critical. So you have to have balance as an offense. It looks a little bit different nowadays as a running attack that we're used to, Balas. Jim tried it a few years ago with fullbacks, and as recent as a couple of years ago with a heavy fullback or a heavy H back trying to do a lot of counter in power football, and we may see elements of that because it does still work to a degree. But as we've also seen in the last couple of seasons, you have to have some curveballs in there, but still run the football with some curveballs. So it's reassuring to hear that they're going to commit to the run more because I think that's always a cornerstone of an effective offense. But it's not any kind of thing that makes me just light up and think, oh well, they're going to commit to the run the football more. I think they're going to win more games. If they're effective at it, they're going to win more games. If
We're gonna we're gonna see more two back sets, is what they're talking about with Haskins and Corum. How does that help an offense, and what are some things that you can do out of that? Obviously, you guys ran a lot of two back sets when you played.
yeah,
A lot of I formation, though, right? So, and we're
yeah.
not going to see
Well,
that.
the two back sets, you get. I think it helps you naturally in your pass protection, and it keeps a linebacker core wondering which ones are going to stay into block, which ones are going to check blitz and leave. And so you've got more options maybe to keep a defense uncomfortable there. It naturally protects your quarterback now on third downs. If you max protect, then you've got some more bodies in there to protect. But it also puts pressure on those guys that are running routes to get separation and get open. So I'm a fan of two back sets. One of them has to be the absolute butt kicking blocker, and they both have to be able to catch the football to be able to run an escape route or a bailout pass for that quarterback if no blitz comes and your offensive line is comfortable with a nice pocket. So I'm a fan of it. I like it. Michigan in the last couple of years in that category I just mentioned about getting separation and getting open hasn't been all that stellar. So hopefully that improves as well. But two back set should be fun to watch because there's lots of options you can do with it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and we'll see who plays quarterback. Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy both playing very well, from what we understand. It's funny, all these preview magazines kind of talking about Alan Bowman being the next quarterback at Michigan and coming from Texas Tech when he hadn't taken a snap. And we'd heard good things about Cade McNamara. The good thing is having more than that one guy, right? That as a
Yeah.
possibility to keep the other guy honest. Shea Patterson knew going in he was the guy. Dylan McCaffrey pushed him a little bit, wasn't ready, never was ready. He's now at Northern Colorado, but love having that competition. What worries me about McNamara is, man, it didn't look like a huge hit that he took last year when he got hurt, and he's not a big guy, so really a lot more pressure on that offensive line to come through.
That's why you got to have two of them, Ballas. You
Right.
got to have two quarterbacks, and they both better have some grittiness to them, and a pretty stout spine to go along with it. Because the position with offenses that are run today, with how often and quarterbacks are keeping that football and running down the field, it better be tough. And the days many years ago when we played, the goal was your quarterback never got touched. Well, offenses now are designed to have your quarterback carry the football and get hit, and the law of averages does kick in, and guys do get hurt. And now the sensitivity around injuries is so much higher that any indication that your quarterback has taken a severe shot, good chance that guy's coming off the field, and he's not maybe not be going back in the field or on the field to play because of concerns about concussion. So you better have two that are ready to go, because there's a really, really good chance you're going to need both.
Yeah. All right. 5-7, and I'm going to go through my losses here at 7-5. I thought they'd lose to Washington. I think they'll lose to Wisconsin, Penn State, Ohio State. Who's the fifth? I've got them losing at Nebraska, and I understand that Nebraska's not very good. That's a tough place to play. Could well be a night game. I don't know where it is on the schedule, but you never know. That sounds like one of those games that they might want to put at night. So, there's say that's 5 right there. Who else are they losing to? Skene, you think they're going to lose to Indiana at home? Maybe Northwestern, who loses a ton?
Yeah, the Northwestern thing, because I think Northwestern is so well coached. And the other thing, Balas, I'm going to say it out loud, and it kills me to say this, but in 1 year, the Michigan State football team figured out how to play that football game, and we showed no signs of it a year ago. Now, I would expect that Michigan's going to play a far more spirited game this year. But there was something missing, severely missing in that team last year. There's a lot of those guys coming back, and I hope that turns out to be a positive thing. But I think between the three teams you just mentioned, there are 2 losses there: Indiana, Northwestern, and Michigan State. Pick 2.
Interesting. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Rutgers, everybody looking at Rutgers, they're going to be an improved football team. That's a well-coached football team, and that is going to be a program. I'm not going to say they're going to win the Big Ten East year in and year out or even compete for it, but they're going to beat some teams. So that's going to be one to watch as well. They're getting better. So your thoughts, I guess, on the defense as a whole. What do you really want to see? I know all these kids are talking, and I feel bad because Don Brown did some good things here. He really did. And he had some big wins. Obviously, he was exposed against some of the better teams on the schedule, just like any defensive coordinator would be against elite offenses. However, these kids are all saying they feel like they're being put in better positions. They talk about the cornerbacks not being put on an island. Your expectations for that group, I'm guessing that they're going to be put in better positions to succeed, especially on the back end.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about that. As much as there was a lot of positive about Don Brown, boy, did he just sink his heels in on that secondary and leave him out there to dry. I have no doubt there's a lot of excitement on the team, the defensive players, because they have options, probably at different sets, different looks, which is good to throw at an offense. The most concerning part is what we already talked about. If that defensive line can't stop the run to some degree, and more importantly, if they can't disrupt a quarterback early in a football game, it's going to be a tough road to go, because you have to get your opposing quarterback worried about the pass rush early in a game to really get in their head. And then, of course, late in the game when everybody's tired and it may be hot and you're running out of energy, that's when the greatest of defensive lines really make themselves felt on the field. And a quarterback in the biggest of moments doesn't have time to get settled. And the receivers don't have time to get separation because they can't get far enough down the field. The most important, I think, really going into this football season, the most critical position group out of that quarterback spot is the defensive line. They've got to be good, Balas, or this is going to be a long year.
Yeah, just like last year. They never got to the quarterback. Even when they had guys like Kwity Paye out there, it was the interior line that was weak. Carlo Kemp getting pushed around. And that's why when you look at a team like Wisconsin that's absolutely dominated up front the last 2 years, you're thinking, how is that going to be any different? And I know that Mozzie Smith has gotten a lot of accolades, and Chris Hinton was a 5-star. He needs to step it up from everything we've heard. Donovan Jeter, we've heard about him for 3 years now, right? So it is up to these guys to really have an impact beyond just getting to the quarterback. These guys got to hold the line, and I'm not seeing it.
They got to hold the line, and Aiden's got to stay. The player that he wants to be, Hutchinson out there. He's got to be the guy that can beat. Anytime he gets a one-on-one and it's a passing down, he's got to win that. He's got to win that to help his line mates, so that then they'll start double teaming, sliding protection, sending it back that way, and then when that happens, somebody else has to pick up for the exposure over to the Hutchinson side. So if Hutch wants to do what I know that young man wants to do, he's got to have a big season and make problems for an opposing offense to be able to block him, to free up space for other defensive line to get there on their own without blitzing. But even if he doesn't they can't do that with blitzing. Aiden still needs to occupy two blockers, or at least keep an offense honest and sliding his way to get protection his way, to create some imbalance in their pass protection, to give us other players on the Michigan defense opportunities to get in that backfield. And you got to get there fast. Remember now, Balas, a lot of offenses now, the ball is gone faster than ever before. So somebody's got to be able to make a move up front and quick to get on a hip, get an edge, and get into the backfield to cause a quarterback, at the very least, to start running around to make a play happen, and then maybe something good happens for us.
Several sources have told us that the linebackers have been the most pleasant surprise of camp. The receivers on offense, the linebackers on defense. Nikhai Hill-Green playing extremely well. Khalil Mullings having a nice camp. Josh Ross back to 225 pounds in great shape. Hopefully more like the player he was a couple of years ago when he was, I believe, honorable mention All Big Ten. But they're really still only as good as the guys in front of them, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, yeah. You can have a really, really good linebacking core. That's a good thing to have. You need to have that as well. But if the defensive line can't keep the opposing Wisconsin offensive line from getting up to them, then they're even going to have problems. You know, again, a 220-pound linebacker, that's a big dude, right? A guy that can run really fast. But a 300-pound offensive lineman from Wisconsin gets on him and gets his hands on him, chances are it's over. You're just not going to win that matchup in a physical one-on-one blocking situation. So the defensive linemen help their linebackers play their best games, and the greatest of defensive linemen do that, plus create disruption themselves. They have to be able to do both. So you mentioned earlier, Mozzie Smith and Chris Hinton. Those two guys in the interior of the Michigan defensive line have to have great seasons. It's not an option. They have to have great seasons.
Yeah, you said 300-pound linemen at Wisconsin when they're losing 40 pounds each. You were talking a line that probably averages about 330. So those guys are
Yeah.
massive. So it's going to be key. It's going to be critical. Doug Skene, I appreciate your time. We'll see you on the golf course soon, and we'll do it again next week.
All right, Ballas, go Blue.